Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. Today I want to show you some of the best back exercises for building that V-shaped upper body. Before we begin with the exercises, there are a couple of things that you need to understand about back training. The first thing is that your back is made up of very large muscles that connect at multiple places all over your spine and shoulder blades, which allows your body to move in a number of different directions. What that means is when it comes to back training that you need a variety of exercises so you can hit all of the different angles. That is especially true if you have a hard time growing your back muscles. The second thing is that all of the pulling exercises will involve most of your back muscles because they're designed to work together. So some exercises may seem like they overlap in muscle activation, but it all goes back to working the angles. On this point, you will often have multiple alternatives to any exercise that you do. So you have to find what exercises are most comfortable for you and what exercises allow you to make that mind-muscle connection. Finally, let's talk about size. Because your back muscles are very large, they can take a whole lot more work volume than, let's say, your arms. So you have to work them accordingly. I generally recommend between 20 to 25 working sets per week. And here I'm talking about working sets only, meaning that I don't count the warm-up sets in my total weekly workout volume. And always remember that ultimately, the best gauge of how you're doing is your physique and the weights that you're lifting. As I mentioned in my previous video on workout splits, a link to which you can find above, I generally train my back only one time per week because it grows very easy. But for some of you that may not be the case. So what you will have to do is train it at least twice a week and use the intensity increasing techniques that I told you about in the video linked above. I really can't stress enough just how effective are the intensity increasing techniques for your overall results. And before we get any further, please do me a favor and subscribe to my channel so you can be notified when I release more cool videos like this. Now let's get to the exercises. One of the first exercises when back training comes to mind is the barbell deadlift or the traditional deadlift. The deadlift is one of the main compound movements that is central to a full body workout split. The deadlift activates a huge number of muscles, including your glutes, quads, hamstrings, erectors, lats, and traps, just to name a few of the main ones. Because the deadlift involves so many large muscles, you're able to generate a huge amount of force. That in turn translates into substantial impact on your body from the standpoint of a hormonal and physiological response. As I mentioned in my previous video on workout splits, this exercise is great for younger lifters who want to gain some overall strength and technique. I would not, however, recommend it to older lifters or people who have back issues. The reason why is that the deadlift can be quite a dangerous exercise if your form is not on point or if you get close to failure where form often breaks down. I, for one, have 2 herniated discs from fighting and construction work, so I tend to be very careful with the weights that I use when I'm doing deadlifts. Meaning that I usually stay at the higher rep range of the fast twitch muscle fibers or 12 to 20 repetitions, and I never go to failure because that is when form breaks down and so does your back. In this case, I'm basically sacrificing a small percentage of my results by prioritizing safety. For people who want to stay away from the deadlift altogether, there are 2 viable alternatives that will allow you to isolate the erector muscles, which are the main back muscles involved in a deadlift. Those alternatives are the back extensions and the machine back extensions. When my back occasionally flares up, I usually revert to doing both back extensions and machine back extensions until I get better. With both of these exercises, you cannot use ginormous weights, but you're also isolating the erectors, and that allows you to use a larger workout volume for a similar result. The second basic exercise that I would absolutely recommend when training back is the pull-up. The pull-up, along with its twin brother, the pull-down, are perhaps the 2 most common back exercises that you see people doing at the gym. The primary muscles used during the pull-up are the lats, but there are also a number of secondary muscles involved like the traps, the teres major and minor, posterior delts, brachialis, and the brachioradialis. The first thing to discuss about pull-ups and pull-downs is the grip and hand placement. The three grip placement variations are extra wide, or 2 times your shoulder width, wide, or 1.5 times your shoulder width, and the close grip, which is its shoulder width. In addition, there are 2 variations of hand placement: supinated or below the bar placement, and pronated or above the bar placement. Although some research suggests that the wide grip, or 1.5 times your shoulder width, activates your lats the most, I think that in general you have to see what's most comfortable for you, what allows you to make a better mind-muscle connection, and what lets you lift the heaviest weights. Because fancy exercises that activate a tiny portion of your lats, or physical therapy exercises that simply don't provide sufficient resistance, won't give you great results. So even though the grip placement is not as crucial, you do have to consider what other muscles you're activating more when you change your grip and hand placement. For example, when you use the below the bar hand placement, you tend to activate the biceps more than the over the bar position. Depending on how you structure your workout split, or if you have any injuries or limitations, this may be of importance. What works best for me is the extra wide angle pronated position on either the pull-up or the pull-down. I also alternate them by doing the pull-up one week and the pull-down the week after that. The reason is because there is a slight difference in core activation and shoulder rotation with the pull-up, which activates the lower traps more than does the pull-down. On the other hand, the pull-down allows you to isolate the lats more. One final thought on the pull-up is that they are a body weight exercise, and that's important because sooner or later you will outgrow them and you will have to increase the weight. With the pull-downs, on the other hand, you can easily adjust the weight up and down and use the intensity increasing techniques to really overload the full range of the fast twitch muscle fibers of your lats. The next back exercise that is really essential to any workout routine is the one-arm dumbbell row. The one-arm dumbbell row is a great exercise to hit the lats from a different angle. In addition to the lats, the one-arm dumbbell row activates the middle of your trap muscles, your rhomboids, teres major and minor, deltoids or your rear shoulders, brachialis, brachioradialis, and your core, pretty much your whole upper body. Unlike most training manuals that will have you do the one-arm dumbbell row with your knee on the bench, I prefer leaning forward on the bench with your feet in a wide stance, which will provide you with a better foundation. The point here is to improve the foundation so you can focus your energy on the muscles you're actually training. Good alternatives to the one-arm dumbbell row are the hammer strength iso row and the plate loaded low row machine, both of which are a bit easier on the lower back because you're not bending over. They both have multiple variations on the grip placement, so play around with them and see what works best for you. Another really great alternative of the one-arm dumbbell row is the seated cable row. The seated cable row may be a bit tricky for people with lower back issues because you're using both arms and a whole lot more weight than the one-arm dumbbell row. But for people who don't have back issues, the seated cable row is a great compound exercise that engages your whole back. Another popular alternative to the one-arm dumbbell row is the bent over barbell row. I am personally not a huge fan of it because it puts too much pressure on your lower back. The reason why that can be problematic is because you're using too much energy supporting your lower back, and that in turn cuts down on your power output for the muscles that you're actually trying to work on, or your lats. In addition, if you already did the deadlifts, then your lower back is already tired, and that will further cut back on the power output for your lats because your body's neuroinhibition will kick in and shut you down before you get a chance to really work on your lats. That is why I did the video on size, a link to which you can find above. You need to think about which muscles are already tired and which muscles are small and will limit your power output and ability to work on the big muscles. Also, as someone who has had herniated disc issues since my teenage years, I always go for safety, and that is why I cannot recommend the bent over barbell row to anyone over 30 and especially someone who is not a hardcore bodybuilder or weightlifter. The next exercise that I would recommend, especially for guys, is the shrug. The traditional shrug activates the upper portion of your trap muscle, which runs along your upper back and has the function of turning and tilting your head, shrugging the shoulders, and twisting your arms. The shrugs can be performed with a barbell, but I find that this is very uncomfortable for most men. In addition, the barbell doesn't allow the shoulders to shrug in their natural direction, which is back and towards the ears. That is why I prefer the dumbbell shrugs, where you can perform the exercise properly. Another alternative is the Smith Machine one-arm shrug, which really allows you to load your traps. As you can see with this alternative, I use the other hand to stabilize my upper body so the core doesn't get overloaded first. Now, most people perform the traditional shrugs, but what they forget is the middle and lower portion of the traps. That is why I would recommend that you include an exercise like the T-bar shrugs to really overload the mid traps and your rhomboids. Unlike physical therapy exercises like the face pulls, this exercise allows you to load the mid traps and rhomboids with a much heavier weight because you won't have to worry about stability. This exercise is also great for fixing your posture and preventing rounded shoulders, especially for people like myself who sit in an office all day. When performing this exercise, the most important thing to remember is to keep your elbows straight. The movement here comes solely from pulling the shoulder blades together. If you have a spotter, you can have them place their hand in the middle of your back between your shoulder blades to help you improve the mind-muscle connection. One final thing to point out is that the T-bar is not your only option for this exercise. You could do this with a dumbbell as though you're doing dumbbell rows, but keeping your elbows straight so you can focus on pulling your shoulder blades together. As far as the order of the exercises, this exercise is always last or second to last in my routine. The reason being that this exercise does not activate a large portion of your traps. So you have to work on the larger muscles first. Otherwise, your mid traps and your rhomboids will limit the amount of force you can exert in exercises that really make a huge difference on your appearance. The final exercise targets the lower traps, which are responsible for retracting your shoulder blades down. In a way, this is the exact opposite direction of muscle activation than when performing the traditional shrugs. So there are a number of machines that you can use to simulate this movement. Here you can see how the shrugging motion is actually downward. Again, the most important thing is to keep the elbows straight. This will allow you to really focus on your lower traps without activating your lats. There's also a great alternative that is performed on the T-bar, where you use the below the bar hand placement and pull with your elbows towards your hips. This exercise activates the lats as well as the lower traps. Just like the mid-trap exercises, I usually leave working on the lower traps for the end of my workout. And with both the middle and lower part of my traps, I alternate different exercises on the weekly or bi-weekly basis. Alright guys, this is all for this video on back training. Do me a favor and scroll down and hit the subscribe button and the little bell notification so you can be notified when I release more videos like this. Also, feel free to comment or ask me any questions that you may have, or give me suggestions about more videos that you'd like to see. Thanks again and see you next week.